Oh, orientation band. Orientation band, you? Huh? Alright, so we've just launched about half an hour ago the ability to now export a single wave. Sorry, I'll talk about how to export more waves later on. But this feature we just launched now lets you to actually get your waves now in a zip file format with all your attachments, or as HTML with no attachments whatsoever. It's really only targeted for people who only have a few waves that want to keep just archived. I'll show you now. It's not super fast. Just the one. Yep. So I can go export. I can go zip bundle. I can get attachments if I wanted to, but there's no attachment in this. It actually takes about 30 seconds to a minute, because what it does is it renders the content on a server, produces the PDF, and lets you download it. So the whole process, it essentially runs the browser on the server. So if someone here can come up with a better way of making this faster, we take all recommendations. And by the way, this was done by a Google person who donated the time to do this, and thanks to him for doing that. Okay, so now I think I've downloaded this somewhere. Wave 3. I can open it, and I get a PDF, so which looks like this. So you get your content back, right? So that's announcement number 1. Oh,
can you demonstrate it with an attachment?
Okay, let me just give you an example with an attachment. Let me find a wave with an attachment. Come on. I didn't mean to spoil that. You know what? I'm just going to upload an attachment for the sake of doing it. No, that's not what I want. Downloads. Let's do this. Now it get done, so I can now go export, include attachments. So you can actually now download the attachment. The attachments will be in a separate folder. You can get all your attachments out. Now, it's unfortunate that there is one thing we have to be careful of. There you go. Here's your files, and you get your file back. Yeah, well, it's a screenshot of Facebook. But the important thing is that if you have an image, you will not be able to get your original image back, because we actually compress images when we store it on the server side. But if you have a binary file, you get the file back. We want to give you the original image back, but we can't, because for space reasons, we already actually trimmed images before we store it. So you'll never be able to get the same image back. So just be aware of that. But if you have lots of waves, I think Soren have the answer for you. Cool.
Okay, so it's not. So yeah, we promised that we would make it possible to import waves to your Wave in a Box instance, and so we are at work. In particular, Christian has written some code to make through the data API that you can programmatically slurp up your waves. So what you can do right now with the data API is that you can programmatically come in via OAuth and authenticate if you so you can have. So the idea is that we want to make it possible for you to add code to Wave in a Box, so they can dial up our data API on the Google Wave production system and read out your waves. And so the data API has OAuth authentication, so that if you give your credentials to your Wave in a Box instance and the code you write for that, then it can dial up and do a fetch wavelet. First of all, it can use the search options on the data API to find the relevant waves, so you can search for your inbox and it can see all the waves. Then you can do a fetch wavelet request to read out the wavelet, including the attachments in there. The problem with the current data API is that it gives you a certain text representation of the contents of a wavelet. But what we are adding this week, we hope to get it out within the next 48 hours, so that when we get to the hacking Thursday and Friday, that this option is there and is live, so anyone whose game can start coding up something to pull out the waves and put them into Wave in a Box. And what we are adding is an option to an optional argument to the fetch wavelet method, where you can ask to have to get the raw deltas in there out, so that they'll come out. So we're still trying to get the binary format right, but it will be a faithful binary representation of the deltas and the operations in there, so that you can then stick them into the wave store in Wave in a Box, and you'll get the wave with the entire faithful copy of the wave with the history. So we're getting there. I think that should make it so that yesterday there was some requests about getting it out in an XML format, so you can better process the contents. This should be the most faithful export that is possible to give you. So I think we covered it also. PDF and HTML export is now live, as David showed you. This, if all goes well, we'll get the data API export option out this week, and then the third thing, Christian didn't promise to make waves available in docs. So that's our export story. Questions?
Yeah. No, sorry, no questions.